This is the Hofstra Radio Alumni Audio Yearbook. Today is August 30th, 2024. Please tell us your name and the years you were at Hofstra Radio.
My name is Shayna Sengstock, and I was at Hofstra Radio from the spring of 2019 until the fall of 2022.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your stories. If you don't mind, could you tell us what shows or programs you worked on at the station?
Sure. So I was a part of Morning Show. I was a part of Newsline. I did like a week of sports because I realized real fast that that wasn't my thing. And I played a big part in the music shows and the weekend shows.
Okay, very good. Do you remember which weekend shows you were working with?
Yeah, I was on the Long Ireland show with Eileen Cronin.
Okay, great. That's a good one to be on. Did you have any titles or positions at the station?
Yes, I was the morning show director from my sophomore, junior year, and then the tech director from my senior year.
Okay, very good. When you were on the air, did you have any nicknames or on-air personas?
I think like the only thing I can think of is like sometimes I went by Shay versus my full legal name, but nothing like crazy, no.
Okay, so I like to go back to the beginning. And it's a two-part question and answer whatever makes sense to you. But I always want to know what it was that brought people to the station to begin with. And then if you could give us a sense of what the station was like, maybe people that you met or what it looked like or what it smelled like. What was happening when you first showed up?
All right, so it's kind of funny how I got into the radio station at WRHU. It was kind of almost by accident. I remember I was walking around during freshman orientation, welcome week kind of thing, and I don't actively remember doing this, but I guess I did, and I filled out one of those applications for the radio station and just handed it in, right? Because like originally I was going to come to Hofstra as a math major, then like I switched up last second and said, okay, I'm going to do journalism. So I wasn't really expecting to do anything like radio related. I kind of just fell into it. So I applied to the radio station, like just when I was applying to everything else. And one day I was at my parents' house at the time and I was cleaning the house and whatever. And I get a call from somebody named Eli. And I was a little confused because I was like, okay, who is this? Why are they talking to me? Type of a thing. And she was like, oh, you filled out an application. We would love for you to come down and have an interview. Let us know when you're available. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll do that. So I did my research as one should do before they get into anything.
Right.
And I learned that, like, at the time, I think WRHU was a 2-time Marconi Award winning station. And I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive, especially if I want to get into radio a little bit more. I always had a love for radio, mostly Long Island radio. And then eventually that grew into like all different types of radio. So I was like, oh, this is a really cool thing. Plus, I was a writer at the time, so I knew that you could write for radio as well. So I decided to run with it. So I went down, I interviewed, and the interview ended up going really, really well, and I enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, well, let's see where this is going to go. So I was, when I got the call that I got accepted into the training class, I was skiing down a double black diamond at the time. And I just lost my friend. He literally fell and I blew past him. So I thought it was my friend calling me. And so I I have to take off my skis, put my poles on the ground. I look at my phone, I'm like out of breath. And I was like, oh, hey, Mark, where are you? And it ended up being Eli. Eli was like, oh, just want to tell you that you got accepted into the WRHU training class. We'd love to have you. And I think it's a hilarious story of how I got in. So ever since then, I kind of just ran with it. I really grew a very big love for radio and a very big appreciation for it as I sat in the training class and went through all of that and met a decent amount of people along the way. And what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
Well, just like when you first saw the station, because obviously the facilities today are remarkable, and back in earlier generations they were less spectacular, let's say. So I always like to get an idea of people's impression. What did the station look like? Did you have an idea of what a college radio station would look like when you first walked in, and what impression did WRHU give you?
So when I first walked into the radio station, my training class was the first class, I believe, with the whole mentorship program. So my mentor took me in and she brought me in and she was showing me around. And I had no idea what a radio station looked like. I had nothing to kind of compare it to. So I was a little bit like, whoa, these are a lot of buttons. These are really
Mm-hmm.
cool, state of the line type of technology. Because, like they have Wheatstone boards and like a lot of different, like different equipment, like SAS equipment and stuff. And now that I'm familiar with it, I know what it is. But at the time, I was like, whoa, shiny buttons, lots of things. And literally, the first day I was there, I think it was like a couple weeks into January, right? And I'm sitting there, and my mentor is showing me around, and all of a sudden, John Mullen and some other guy who's now my best friend, his name is Joe, busted through the doors and were like, "We're playing Christmas music. We gotta cut it off." So they literally came in, whooped in, pulled up G Selector, were reprogramming things like right in front of me, and I was like, "Whoa, this is pretty cool." And I just like, I don't know, I found it so fascinating that there was a bunch of people, or a few people more or less, that really knew what they were doing and could really like fix things in a second. It's not the end of the world. It's radio, it's live radio. You move on, you keep going, type of a thing. And I found that really cool from day one. And I was very thankful for the class that I ended up being with at in the training class, because we're all very close for the most part, and a lot of us are off doing pretty amazing things.
Wow, that's great, and what an introduction! It's sometimes a big scene like that will intimidate people, and they'll go, "Oh, this isn't for me." And then for some of us, it's like, "Wow, that was really cool. I want to do that." And it seems like you're
Mhm.
in the second boat there.
I think that was the moment that made me want to really get into programming and learn programming very well, and what got me into wanting to learn Zeta and wanting to learn G Selector as well. And I think it helped me so much because WNYC, where I work now, we just implemented Zeta. We were using a program called David before, and I was the person who really got to work with everybody, like the higher up engineers and stuff, because I knew the programming from Hofstra.
Mm,
So because I was able to learn that when I was at RHU, I was able to take those skills and now program Zeta at WNYC.
that's amazing stuff. What a preparation! What training the station gave you to get out there into the professional world. I want to talk more about the training class and getting to know John and other teachers at the
Hmm.
station. But I think you said earlier you had considered studying math, and then
Yeah.
you last minute switched to journalism. And I've seen a lot of people say, "Well, I was going to be a doctor, I was going to be computer science," but math to journalism. Tell me more about that.
So my family is full of doctors, and I never kind of wanted to go down the science route, but I was very good at math. When I graduated high school, I had a 98.9 average in math, right?
Nice.
So, because of that, my mother was like, "Oh, you gotta do something with that. You should become an actuary. You should go into math." And I was like, "Okay, mom, cool. I guess, like, that's what I'll do." But the more that I was doing it, the more that I was thinking about it, like I always really enjoyed writing. And when I was a little kid, I had a typewriter. So I used to make newspapers off of my typewriter when I was younger. And I loved doing that. And I loved always storytelling and telling other people stories and stuff. And I was a huge fan of Lois Lane growing up. So the more I thought about it, and the more I was like, if I'm an actuary, I'm going to have a pretty boring and lonely life. And I would say I'm a pretty extroverted person and I love talking to people. So I was talking with my dad for a while and I was like, I don't know if I want to go into math. I don't know if that's something I really want to do. And he was the guy who brought up the idea of journalism. He was like, "Oh, why don't you think about this instead? Because you're good with people, you know how to get them to open up, to tell their stories and everything. And you've always liked writing and you always liked the newspaper stuff. So maybe think about that." So I did. And then I just decided that that was the best path for me to go down. But now I'm in
Yeah.
tech, but still in radio, though.
I think I can see ways that the math part of your brain and the journalism part of your brain, it's sort of applicable to doing more of the tech stuff, that you're taking lessons learned from all of that. But
Hmm.
what an interesting path, and how great that your parents were supportive in either direction. Sometimes it's parents are very demanding when they tell you what to study, or they're not supportive of something like radio, which I can understand. But
I think
that's lovely.
my dad was very supportive. I think it was a little bit of a hard push at first
Mm,
because I don't think that they, my parents, again, they're doctors. They didn't know the whole industry and stuff, so they had nothing to relate it to. So they were kind of, how do I say this? Basically, they were they wanted me to be stable and safe, and they
mm.
knew that what they were in was stable and safe. So it took me a while to have to kind of prove myself to them in order for them to feel comfortable. And of course now they are, but they were supportive. But I think it just took them a little while to kind of like get the vision and get the idea when it came to things.
Mm. Healthy skepticism.
Yes.
Okay, that's fair, and that's good parenting, I think.
Hmm.
So let's get back to the training class. Now, again, you are kind of not sure what you're signing up for, at least at first.
Hmm.
From what I understand, the training class is pretty intensive. It's usually like an hour and change on a Wednesday night or something like that. Did you
Hmm.
realize you were signing up for a sixth course, or what was your introduction to the class?
It's funny. I really didn't realize what was going to happen, what was going on until I was on the phone with Eli. I would say that I gave my mentor the wrong email for me. I think I spelled a word like I think I spelled my name wrong, or I spelled Gmail wrong. Something I did something stupid, and I missed the first day of training class because of that.
Oh
And
no.
I think I got a call from Eli, and she was like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to miss it." But yeah, but being in the training class day one, I would say it was pretty intimidating, to be honest with you. You're in a lecture hall full of people, and you see these directors or student directors, and as a freshman, and these people were like sophomores, juniors, seniors at the time. I thought they were the coolest people ever, and I was like, wow, this is crazy, and I felt like almost weirdly intimidated to go up to them and like talk to them or try and be friendly with them. But they
Hmm.
did a very good job of alleviating those fears while still being in a professional environment. I think like they were very friendly. They always reached out, always were like, "Here's my number in case you need anything, in case you want any help, in case you want to learn anything." I think that that really helped me more than being in the training class was having that one-on-one personal help from people. And I think like that was something amazing that RHU did, was to implement the mentorship program. Because I think like I can't, obviously I can't testify for before the program, but I think it made the students feel like they belonged at the radio
Mm.
station, because they were actually invited to come in and really learn and be like, okay, let's hang out in the office and stuff. So I think that that was a big way that I felt very comfortable, was through the mentorship program and the people like personally coming up to me and be like, hey, let me teach you this, let's learn this type of a thing.
Right. So I guess this is the mentorship program that's news to me as well. So I
Oh.
guess this is just the quick summary, if I'm getting this right, is that an upper class student would sort of be assigned to you and help you figure out how the station worked, and come sit in during my show, or I can show you this, or ask
Hmm.
me questions. Is that basically it?
Yeah, so each mentor would get assigned like, depending on how many students, like two or three or four students.
Hmm.
And yeah, you would have like an hour a week to meet up with them. Obviously, like, if you want to do more, you could, or whatever, if there was something that you really wanted to learn. And they would help you with everything. They're like, I was a part of the mentorship program, and when I had mentees, you would help them study for the end test. You would answer all their questions. You would show them how to use all the equipment. You would teach them how to do like a basic mic break and stuff, and how to feel confident on air. There was, because I liked programming too. I
Hmm.
always try to show them a little bit of the programming side, where they wouldn't get like, very intimidated by that, but just the basics. And I think that it really helped people to be able to have that mentorship program.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. I mean, in my time, I was fortunate because I went to high school in Levittown, and a
Hmm.
few of my friends who were a year or two older had already been at Hofstra and at the radio station. So I was able to call them and show up and track with them or get a little bit of feedback and other people that I knew. So that was sort of a leg up that I kept me at the station probably where I may not have stuck with it if I didn't have that. But it's nice to see that that's been formalized into a program. And I'm sure it's very helpful to new people coming in. And since you were a mentor, I'm sure it helped the people that you worked with as well.
I would hope so. One of my mentees, he's currently actually working at NBC in
Hmm.
Manhattan. So I think it helps. I personally do, and I know I think that my mentor would be proud of where I am today as well when it comes to certain things.
Wow, that's great. That's phenomenal stuff. So, so I like to ask. It's hard sometimes to remember exactly when, but you get through the training class, you get all this feedback and mentorship, and then you're on the air the first time. Do you remember getting on
Hmm.
the air behind the mic or behind the board the first time, or do you have an idea of what you were feeling in those days?
I remember both very vividly.
Yeah.
Um, my one of my good friends, Jesse, actually taught me how to run the board for the radio station, and that's like when I was doing Newsline though. So I remember feeling again very intimidated, very overwhelmed, very like, okay, what do I do, kind of a thing. And then Jesse was really good at just alleviating my fears and everything as well. He was like, "Wow, you're such a fast learner. You can pick this up really quickly. You're doing great." And then he threw me directly on the board, like
Hmm.
straight into the fire the second time around. He was like, "Okay, you did well your first time like off air and just practicing. Now do it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But he was there, every single step of the way, which I think like for me to learn, I kind of have to be thrown into certain things and be like, "Okay, this is a student run radio station. We are here to learn. If you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. You're going to figure it out and learn very fast."
Right.
So I was very thankful for him to like do that for me. The first time I did a community volunteer shift, I didn't know how to work the CD player at RHU at the time. I know how to work a CD player. I was born in '99. I'm not that young or
Hmm.
old or whatever, but I didn't know how to use the CD player at RHU. And our station manager Kenny Conrad, he came in and he helped me through my first shift, and it was pretty cool to actually like, okay, you have to plug the CDs in, you type the number, you have the Eileen at the time do her mic break, then she says, okay, and this is a song we're playing, throws to you, and you click the button, and boom, it's on the air. It's live radio.
Before you talk about your first time behind the mic, I would like to
Hmm.
point out that most CD players on the home level are pretty simple to figure out, but sometimes commercial CD players are a little intimidating. And I was definitely on your side for a couple of minutes when you said that you knew what a typewriter was and you knew what a newspaper was, and that made me feel good as a certified old person. That made me feel pretty good. But then you started. I got a little shaky on the CD player, but you redeemed yourself as a young person. So thank
I
you
promise I know
for
what
being
a
aware.
CD player is. I promise I know, and I know what a record player is too. I collect records, so I know that at least.
Well, I teach high school now, and my 15-year-olds come in and they say, "Well, when stuff happened in the late 1900s," and I think that's when
Oh.
I was in college, so you just failed. But so it's tough getting old. But anyway, you were talking about your nervous, your anxiety before getting behind the board, and it seems like you passed with flying colors there. But then getting behind the mic again, some people get very very nervous about that. What was your feeling?
I would say again, a lot of times what happened with me was my friends kind of forced me to do stuff that I wasn't ready for yet, and I
Hmm.
just had to kind of sink or swim. So same kind of thing with being on air for the first time. I did an off the chart shift because my one of my good friends, he was the because one of my good friends was the producer for Off the Charts. So he one day was like, "Okay, eventually you're gonna have to learn how to talk on air. Basically, here's the rules: don't talk about the Islanders, don't swear. You have to say what station you're on and say what show you're on, and close it with Radio Hofstra University. There, now go do it." I was like, okay.
Wow.
I was like, are you sure I can talk about whatever I want? And he was like, yeah, pretty much, keep it short and concise. Don't go too long, keep it like 20, 30 seconds each break or whatever and go for it. So he put me on a shift and I rolled up one day at 9 o'clock in the morning and I did the bad idea of drinking a Monster Energy drink right before I got on the air because I was nervous and I was tired and I was like, okay, I have to be peppy. I have to have a lot of energy. I can do this. Let's do this. So I didn't know that he was in the other studio and he routed my mic so he could listen to me. So I was like, I was talking to myself right before I was going to go on air, and I was like, I can't believe he's making me do this. I'm mad. I'm upset at him. And he could hear me say all these things, so he was dying laughing in the other studio, little did I know at the time. And then, popped the mic on, gave my first break. I did a weather break. And it ended up going just fine. Obviously, it was a little shaky because it's, your first time talking on air. There's a lot, looking back, you're like, I could have did differently or whatever. But I just like grew to love it. And then like eventually me and my friend, we decided to do our own like knockoff morning show. So like after morning show, we would also record like a 9 o'clock morning show together. And we did that for Off the Charts. So then me and him started working together and doing that as well. So I think that like of all people at RHU, he was the person who showed me the most and did the most with me and helped me out the most. And actually was the person that really made me love radio and forced me to overcome my fears when it came to all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that walk in and they know what they want to do and they're prepared and they've got an idea in their head. But for a lot of us who walk in sort of, like you said before, accidentally or not on purpose, it can be very intimidating to get on the air. So to have an advocate, to have a mentor, to have someone who kind of pushes you beyond your comfort zone, but also, in a controlled way, that's a huge help. And I'm wondering, based on this, it sounds like, here's a challenge, you take it on and you do it. When was there a point that you felt comfortable either behind the board or behind the mic? Was there a light bulb moment where you're like, that was it? Or was it just a general, I'm getting used to this, I'm getting better every day?
That's a great question. I would say my second time doing Newsline, like by myself, I had like that utopia, euphoric kind of a moment where I was like, oh, I'm actually good at this. I can do this. This is my thing. The first time I was behind the board during Newsline, again, was another time where it happened very randomly. I just got board op cleared for the radio station, and the board op that day, I think was at a Mets game, or I forgot exactly what, but he was not coming in, right? And I was the only other person who knew how to run the boards at that time. So they're like, okay, I guess you're good enough. Let's throw you on air. You can do this. And if you fail, you fail. And if you succeed, you succeed. I was like, oh, okay. And thankfully, one of the producers at the time, he was like, all right, let's go. You're fine. Like, you're gonna be just fine. Just like get over yourself. So I did that, and I didn't do the greatest. I'll be honest. I think I botched up the first half of the show, and I did great the second half. And I kind of got like mad at myself because I was like, I know I could do better. So what I used to do is I used to go into the studio by myself and practice, and I would set up the show. I would make myself do it over and over and over again until it was perfect. And I think I have a very competitive nature, so I've always kind of wanted to be the best of the best, no matter what. So I didn't want it to be like, okay, I failed this, and I'm just gonna be a failure forever, and I'm never gonna get better at this. So I really practiced that, and I made myself a engineer, like a board opping hand guide for Newsline, because I don't think we had that in the past, like a rundown for like how the show would go. So I made one of those, and I ended up using that with all of my mentees as well, and I think that helped them out a lot too. But
Wow.
yeah.
So is that stuff that you just did on your own, or was someone encouraging you to do more practice, or is that's just your style to I'm going to practice until I get it?
That's my style. Like I said, I'm hyper competitive, I think that has pushed me my whole
Hmm.
entire life. I come from a family where there's four of us kids in total, and it's always been like a race to who's going to be the best of the best type of a thing.
Wow.
So if um, if I fail at something, I got to keep on pushing at it to be better than. It's more like I have to be better than myself, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, because like yeah, there's other people out there and everything, but I don't want to. I never am the type of person that wants to be happy with like the current position that I'm in, more or less. Like I could always do better, you know. So I'm gonna always kind of push myself to do better, and that's pretty much what happened with the board opting side of things.
Hmm.
I was not happy with my performance, and nobody needed to tell me because everybody was like, they're very sweet. So he was like, "Oh, you did fine. You'll just get better. Like, you'll be okay." I was like, "No, I'm not okay. I gotta really push at this." And it it helps me a lot. I think I've trained board hopping wise. I would say over 100 of the students I trained
Wow.
because yeah. So you gotta start at the beginning. You gotta learn the basics and do all that stuff. But once you get past that, you really can exceed in anything that you put your mind to.
Hmm. I love that. No matter what generation it is, what time it is, what kind of the facilities there are, there's always been a spirit at Hofstra Radio of, okay, you're the new person,
Hmm.
and we're gonna throw you into the fire here and see how you do. But I mean, I'm sure there were times, but for the most part, for the vast majority of people that I've spoken to and that I know, there was a lot of encouragement. There was a lot of, well, that
Hmm.
was could have been better, but let's do it this way. There's a spirit of helping out the next generation. And that's kind of interesting. When you're 18, 19, 20 years old, most people
Hmm.
aren't thinking about helping the next generation, but that becomes part of it. So it sounds like you were helped and then you help the next generation along as well. That's amazing. I love to hear
Yeah,
that.
I think that mentorship is one of the biggest things that will push the next generation to be better and to keep going and to keep making radio stay alive.
Hmm. Great stuff. Great stuff. So this is your technical and professional development and as you're
Hmm.
getting comfortable, and I think you've already alluded to this, but I like to ask, was there a moment where you felt socially comfortable at the station? It sounds like it was pretty early on, but was there a moment where you're like, oh, these are my people, I've made the right decision?
I met my best friend day one. Like I said, he was the guy that ran in, was like, let me help everything. He had a part-time job at the time working for JBC
Hmm.
Radio all the way out on Long Island.
Hmm.
So um, me and him clicked pretty fast because I ended up just sitting right down next to him day one of the training class. And then the guy behind me, Tony Puglisi, me and him became really good friends too. He ended up becoming the Islanders producer. Basically, like the people who I sat next to during the training class really became my friends. And then once I joined the radio station, being on morning show as well, that expanded my friend group. And I think it was one of those things like when you join the radio station at Hofstra, it's kind of like a huge family where you meet one person and they kind of just introduce you to everybody else and they're like,
Hmm.
oh, here's so and so, this is what they do, here's this person, there's what that person does. And then once you join teams as well, like the morning show team, the news team, and you have like a specific day, like okay, your day's Tuesday morning show, that Tuesday morning show team becomes like the best of friends as well because you're all working together to achieve a really cool goal, and you just bond over that.
Hmm. I love to hear that. That's great. Um, if you could go back into your mindset when you first got that call on the ski slope or when you first showed up to the training class, at that moment in time, what did you think Hofstra Radio would mean to you, and what did it become?
I thought that House Radio was going to be a place where I improved my writing.
Hmm.
Because, like I said, I was very into writing, and I was a part of the Hofstra Chronicle as well. And I thought that okay, this was a place that I'm going to learn how to write for radio. It's going to be really cool. I probably will never have a director position or anything. And then it came to mean so much more to me as I was there and learned about the passion and the vision of Hofstra Radio. And, you know, the people who had like really big faith in me. I think it was, I was running for the assistant news director of engineering. And I think it was I think it was Bruce, it might have been John, but came up to me and was like, "Hey, you want to run for morning show director instead?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, sure, why not?" And then it was John again that he pushed me to become the tech director, because he was like, you pretty much fix every single thing here. You follow around the engineers all the time. I could see that this is something that you like to do. Why don't you get into that instead? And he's like, and plus it's good because you're a young woman in engineering, and you're a visionary as well, so this is a good path for you. Like, go down that. So John and Bruce really pushed me to be a lot better than I probably would have been. They had a lot of faith in me, which is great. But I saw the vision a lot when I was working there and was able to make things and put things out and be like, wow, this is really cool thing that we're doing. We're interviewing people about their lives. We're creating radio. We're spreading stories. We're sharing different ideas and stuff. And I like that side of everything. It's very community based.
Hmm. Yeah, and when you have leaders like Bruce and John who can identify strengths and things that people are good at and steer them that way,
Mm-hmm.
what a remarkable environment! Wow, what a journey! That's great
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
I think it was Leanne that told me, if John and Bruce believe in you, you're gonna go far, and because they can sense talent and they can see it, and pretty much like listen to what they say because they only have your best interest at heart when it comes to
Hmm.
all of that.
Hmm. That's great advice. That is great advice, and to have such leaders like that, and again, like you said, the community and the teamwork and the mentorship. That's phenomenal stuff. This has been a great conversation. I've been smiling and nodding the whole time. This has been
Thank
wonderful.
you.
I've got a whole bunch of other questions, and I'm hopeful someday we can sit down and you can tell us some more stories.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been great to relive the glory days.